1 2 1 2. What's going on, everyone? How you guys doing? It's been a long time. I can see a lot of people in the chat already. That's pretty cool. Hello, everyone. It's your friendly neighborhood Rodolfo Silva here. When is it starting? It started already. What are you talking about? Like, here I am. The wait is over. All right. Ian. Hey, Ian. Hope you're still in the chat. That'd be awkward. Hey, there he is. All right, everyone. So, welcome back. And this is, in essence, I think some people might be a little bit confused. It's called Environment Art Workshop. It's basically the Building Worlds stream, but renamed, rebranded, because I guess we'll be talking a little bit more than just actually world building, and more also into props, into ZBrush workflows, ZBrush techniques for environment artists, actually. But obviously most of these techniques can be applied for anything else. Cool. So without further ado, let me change my screen here real quick. Whoops, am I getting the right one? Yeah, this is the right one. You guys seeing this, right? So there we go. So we have a little bit of I teased this on socials. We have some props here that I want to start building. I want to start building more and more props. So we're going to do that today. I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to model for the stream particularly, because I know a lot of people, especially in the ZBrush community, ZBrush fandom, find the things I love and enjoy boring, such as rocks and stuff, right? How to sculpt rocks and how to sculpt wood. But here's the thing. Very, very important for environment artists is actually understanding texturing. And by texturing, I don't mean the process of, Substance Painter and that kind of stuff. I mean surface detail, right? So how to convey wood, how to convey rock, how to convey marble, how to convey those materials sculpturally, right? And this is the sort of workflow I'm going for here. In essence, most environment artists that are watching this are going to go, oh, I could have just made a trim sheet with all these wooden panels and then just have a low poly and unwrap the UVs on top of those trim sheets. That's perfectly fine. That's how you would do it in most AAA scenarios, right? But in this case, I want to go for more of a RGB kind of workflow, meaning that it's going to capture that sculptural detail in our bakes, right? And then I'm going to use that to lerp multiple smaller sized tileable textures in the engine, right? Meaning that you need to also take into account the size of your textures when you're doing a video game, when you're doing an environment or something. So the less pixels per texture, the better. So here I have a little wooden cart, obviously still work in progress. Some of these wooden boards are not really, let's say, not there at all. Like you can see there's a little bit of repetition here, some patterns that I used. Now, this is a good segue to explain a little bit of how I'm leveraging, for example, the new Lightbox system that we just added on ZBrush 2026. S-tier UI colors. That's right. That's right. This is another thing that we can talk about because I love me some customization. You guys know me, right? So I've made this more of a kind of like Diablo-esque kind of theme for the UI. Just to set the mood, and you could do, let's say you're doing multiple styles, you're working in multiple styles, you're working in stylized art, you're working in more a dark fantasy kind of a scenario, or you're doing more, I don't know, like colorful, and you can customize the UI for that specific work, and then just basically go over here and just do this, right? Which is, in essence, cycling through all of your customizable and your customized UI. And I have my Diablo one and a beige one that I made. This is more of a classic kind of look. And then we have this one, right? So, and I picked the colors from actual images, like concept art images from Diablo. So yeah, as I was saying, I don't remember what I was saying. So yeah, basically, I was going to talk about the Lightbox. So this has been a great new addition for us here in the ZBrush team. For me particularly, because as you guys might know, environment artists tend to pile up a bunch of assets, a bunch of alphas, a bunch of tileable textures, a bunch of models for kit bashing, that kind of stuff. And now we have a user-defined Lightbox, meaning that it's only going to have your assets, the brushes you download, the brushes you acquire through whatever. You can acquire those through, there's multiple. There's like Gumroad, there's ArtStation, there's a bunch of platforms that sell brushes like this, Flip Normals. And you can just go over here, put all your brushes here. I have my XMD toolbox brushes here. And if I open this up, I have the entire collection here. I don't even need to use XMD like the actual app. I just have a subscription to that. And I just shot every single brush onto my folder. And now ZBrush will detect those. So I have, you know, like some cliff patterns over here. By mistake, I obviously also imported the PNG, which I shouldn't. You also have the alphas. So if I open up this alpha over here and then change this to drag rect, go to my cylinder here that I use for testing, and I start dragging this out, you can see I have an alpha that is directly, I think it's scanned. I think the guy from XMD does scan these. So yep, that's a huge set of brushes. That's true. You guys can get that if you're if you have the XMD toolbox, right, which has a bunch of brushes. I just downloaded the ones that are related to environment art, obviously because I'm an environment geek. So everything from surfaces to rocks to, they even have kit bashing IMM. Like they have the starter kit over here, like with ears, feet, and arms and whatever. That's actually not environment art based. And then I have my ArtStation brushes, some of them, which I have not put there yet, but I have plans to put my ArtStation. Sorry, the camera kind of froze there for just a second. Did you export that character? Yes. So that is some of you are basically paying attention. That's good. This is the Mannequin from Unreal, right? So I have the scale directly, and you can see if I go over here to my scale master, this is just basic setup that I do when I start any prop, any object, any tellable texture, right? Is that you want to make sure that you're in correct scale. And if I go over here to this subtool, you can see my scale master in the Y in centimeters, it's 180 centimeters, right? Which is the usual size of a third person character. And knowing this, then I know that I can model around this in terms of proportion, and it's always going to have the right proportion. This is important for, obviously, for texel density, for UV packing, how to pack multiple assets. And this goes into my next point, which was I want to pack this together with maybe a couple of more props into the same texture. So you have to think ahead as an environment artist, right? You have to think, what's the texturing pipeline? What's the material looking like? Am I using a masked, a layered material system? Am I using a RGB blending kind of thing, right? Am I vertex painting the detail? You know what I mean? So in my case, I want to bake this, and I want to bake this and then get a mask out of it. So in order to get that, I am using ArrayMesh. So if I turn off all my ArrayMesh pieces, like over here, whoops, a daisy, you can see that these are basically, this is what is going to get baked, right? This. So that's a lot less texture space. That's a lot less UV shells that you're going to have. Eventually, what you need to do after you bake all of this, I get my low poly in ZBrush for this particular reason. If I get my low poly in ZBrush, I can just reactivate the ArrayMesh and then bake that, and that finalized model will have the same UVs because ArrayMesh just copies whatever it has, right? So it's perfect, right? It's perfect for this kind of workflow where I'm taking advantage. I'm going to have overlapping UVs. I'm going to have multiple optimization key points in my modeling process through ArrayMesh, right? So I use ArrayMesh all the time for this kind of stuff. Obviously not just for this kind of stuff, but also for modeling itself, like if you're doing a pattern or whatever, that is useful. So I was thinking, all right, I have this work in progress. I can either finish this up and talk a little bit more about materials, how to sculpt actual materials, how to sculpt that tactile nature of a material, and then how to retopologize this and make this a game-ready mesh using ArrayMesh, unwrapping UVs, and then they're going to get packed eventually, right? So that is one of the things we could do. The other thing is we could do a different model from scratch. That's a little more, I think, simple. Let's hope it is simple. I don't know. Usually when I say it's simple, it never is the case. It's just, it's usually more complicated than I predict. So it's up to you guys. You have 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I decided for you. No, I'm kidding. You guys can plug in your ideas if you guys have any. If we can't do that today, we're gonna do it in a couple of weeks where I'm streaming again. I'm gonna start being more consistent with these streams this year. That's one of my resolutions that I did, right? So yeah, so basically let's start off with something new. So I want to start and make basically this environment is a small little structure, sort of like a keep in the middle of a cliff side. I wish I had the concept art here and the concept artist to show you, but basically I have a blockout already. I have a landscape all going in a game engine, and now I need to start building the models, building the assets, building the textures, all in ZBrush and Substance, right? And so I want to start populating that, and one of the things I want to do, I want to have a blacksmith outside, right outside the keep, that sells weapons. So we're going to have a stall, like a market stall, a little blacksmith oven, and then we're going to have some scattering props, small props, like a bucket, like a wooden cart, like we're going to have, I have my pure ref over here. We're going to have, well, obviously not a market stall that sells fruit, but a market stall nonetheless. And then we're gonna have some things like some props for the actual keep and the door for the keep, but that's a separate conversation. I have another pure ref actually. The well is still not really, I haven't decided if I'm gonna do the well, but basically my idea would be something along these lines. You know, like this is more of a stable kind of a thing where the horse is, but I like the way they did the drapery on top. And this is another thing that I'm going to have to touch on today. How to do drapery that has baked normals and uses an atlas and a trim sheet as well. So, okay. So let's start off. And the first thing I usually do, obviously, is I go over here and I start by doing everything as gizmo primitives, right? And let me know if I'm speaking too fast, because when I get into it, I start drying up, and then I have to keep drinking and hydrating. Environment courses. No, I taught a course at Escape Studios a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, a year ago. I don't remember. Time is just a mess at the moment. And yeah, and I teach like physical classes every now and then, like workshops, but I don't have online environment courses. So you have me here. So you can come here and ask questions, you know. So tune in for everything, for every stream that I do. So yeah, first of all, again, setting the scale. This is important. So I'm going to insert that mannequin. So that basically that's skeletal mesh mannequin. And then I'm going to go over here to my scale master. You can find it under Z plugin. And then you click sliders to subtool size. Let me just solo mode that. So by pressing this little button over here, if I click sliders to subtool size, it's going to give me 18 centimeters. This is not what I want, right? So I want this to be at 180, which is the unit measure. So 180, first of all, I'm going to set my scene scale to centimeters, and I'm going to do either convert this 18, because currently it's in millimeters, right? I'm going to either convert this 18 to 18 centimeters, or I can convert millimeters to centimeters. So instead of, it's going to be 180, but instead of millimeters, it's going to be centimeters. I'm going to do that, right? So now that I've done that, if I click sliders to subtool size, if I just mess around with the sliders and then press the sliders to subtool size, it's gonna give me the size of the current subtool that I have. And now it's correct, right? So this is important, obviously, for us to start modeling to scale, right? So I'm looking at my reference over here, and currently, thankfully, my reference has a human model scale, right? Now, there's multiple ways we can go about this, and we have to plan this ahead. We either start modeling, we either think, okay, are we going to use a trim sheet, or are we actually want to sculpt this, right? If I want to sculpt this, I want to have the individual elements separate, right? They're separate, and then I'm going to bake them separate, and then I'm going to duplicate those so I can have enough size in my UVs to pack everything, right? And this is also important because this leads me to another thing, which is I want to insert that plane. I think it's this one. I'm not sure. I have two planes here for some stupid reason. So if I insert that plane, yeah, this one. This is the equivalent of my texture, my 4K texture, according to my texel density, which is 10.24. So this means effectively that I have this amount of space in my UVs, all right, according to this scale, right? So if I have a pillar here, let me just move this to home, actually, move this to home, and then move this back, and, or actually I want to snap that over there, and move this to home, and I want to make sure that this is sort of around there, so I know what I'm doing, okay? And also this mannequin, I want to move it to the side. This is just the scale for context, and there we go. This is my basic setup for modeling anything, right? And then for environment art, I don't want to make complex environments. How can someone approach it? So there's a number of incredible courses, and actually also YouTube channels that I follow on a regular basis. There's a cool, an incredible, actually underrated YouTube channel. The guy is a Serbian artist, and it's called CG Crucible. If you're just starting with environment art, that could be a little overwhelming, the kind of concepts that he's talking about. But he goes through his video series is basically going through the entire process of making an environment for AAA games, right? Starting with the reference gathering, then blockout, then materials, how to set up the material for layers, for displacement, then making the textures and making those materials. That's the first step before you even start modeling any props or whatever. And then starting to build your modular kit around that. And then I'm hoping that the next step is how to actually make set dressing props and how to pack everything. And the guy is pretty knowledgeable on what he's saying, right? And everything he says, I absolutely vouch for him. Like it is, let's say, industry approved. You know. Cool. All right. So let's start off by looking at these concepts. And one of the things I want to do is I want to start blocking out. Let me just turn off my perspective here real quick. I want to start blocking out the little like structure of this. So I'm going to do like that. And one of the things I might start already doing is going to ArrayMesh, opening ArrayMesh. I want to turn on transpose so I can see the pivot. I'm going to lock position, reset, and now the pivot is in the center. And now I'm going to start mirroring, right? And now this means that whatever I do over here is doing over there. I don't have symmetry turned on, by the way. This is just ArrayMesh, right? So, so the name of the channel is CG Crucible. There's also another one called Next Level Game Art. And this is more of like analyzing the environment art, and actually not just environment art, but concept art as well, character art of multiple games. They just released a video on Baldur's Gate 3. They released a video on Diablo 4. They released one for Last of Us, God of War. So the guy breaks it down according to ArtStation, basically art blasts, right? So let me see if I can put it in the chat. Actually, I want to reference those small channels because they're basically, there you go. Next Level Game Art. Give me a second. I'm trying to find it for you guys. There we go. Next Level Game Art. This is Next Level Game Art. and this is CG Crucible. Those two. Those are the most recent ones that I found that are they have golden, I mean, really golden content, man. Like, you can't, that's a very niche type of knowledge that you're finding there, and they're underrated. Like, I mean, the CG Crucible has like 3,000 subscribers, which is not a lot, right? And the Next Level Game Art has like 7,000 or something, but it's really good. You should watch those videos. They basically break down all of these techniques, you know, and vertex painting and materials and that kind of stuff. So it is pretty cool. All right, let me just show you a few things. Okay, so let's build this structure. Then we can always change it later. That's the beauty of ZBrush. It's kind of a... Let me just append a new one, do the same thing, going Z mirror, just so I can have understanding what this is gonna look like. Can push this back over here. Maybe this is too wide, be something like this. This doesn't matter though. What matters is I'm gonna make this single one, right? This single pillar, let's say. Maybe it's a little too thin. Like something like that, right? And then I'm gonna need another structure. So in my case, what I usually do is I duplicate this by holding Control, and then I go to my, basically I go to Subtool, Split Unmasked Points, and it retains the ArrayMesh, right? So I can do something, obviously I can just delete this last one because I don't need it, and just go like this. And then move it up over there. Just think about the structure a little bit. Let me think about this. How does this make sense? Okay. Yeah, there we go. So we can actually do something that's a little more interesting. We can do something like this. This is why I turned off perspective, right? So I can go and do something like that. There we go. And I could switch this to maybe like a cube. I don't need to be precious at the moment. I just want to block it out. Something like this. Like this. Maybe a little thicker. There we go. And also, this could be a little different. It could be something like this. Be a little smaller. So it would be, like, you can see the character there. It would have a stall right in front of them. So then this needs to be like this. And then on my ArrayMesh, on the first ArrayMesh actually, I want to make sure I am scaling it up on the y-axis. Oh, it's actually not on the first one, this one. So y-axis. So the problem here is that I have my pivot is sitting over there. So I'm gonna scale it up just a little bit. And then I'm gonna move my pivot sort of to where I think it should be at the base. I could also just reset this, but I'm too lazy. So doing something like that. And reset that actually. Let me just reset the entire thing. Okay, reset. And I want to go over here, lock position, reset. Z. Where's the Z mirror? There you go. Z mirror. And now this one, I can delete this one actually first. And then scale it, push it down over there. Right, something like that. Now if I scale it on the Y, like that, that's good. Yeah, that's fine. It's gonna clip through the floor anyway. So, showing these, mostly I've seen channels do Megascan environments. Yeah, that's the thing. Most of the content you see online is just Megascans or scan data, and then just doing quick level blockouts, which is good if you're applying for a job as a set dressing artist or a level artist, you don't really need, well, you need to show that you can do assets, but you most of all, you need to show that you can do storytelling through assembling environments. And that means you can use Megascans, you can use whatever you want, right? To show that skill. Let me see. I don't know if this makes sense though. Doesn't matter. Let's test it out first. So append a new one and then do this. Mirror. There we go. Maybe this one be a little different. We're gonna have a little bit of a duplicate here. I'm gonna duplicate this, do that, and change this to a cylinder. Scale it down to something along these lines, and then scale it up. So this would be something like this, right? And again, keep in mind that we can always just basically reapply this. So if I sculpt one of these and I want to maybe have the same over there, that could also be done. That's no problem. So we have one of these, then we need two across. So I'm gonna actually split this. Whoops. Split unmasked. I can duplicate this one. And in order to make sure that this is snapping with a gizmo, hold Alt, tap that, and snap it over there. So now I'm pretty sure that I have this ability to just basically flip it over. And in this case, I don't want my ArrayMesh to do this mirroring thing. So I just want it to be more like here, here, and here, and then scale it, and then this would be, I'm just trying to think about how does this work, right, in terms of yeah, there we go, because this needs to make sense, like in the world that we're building, right? So this, and then it's going to have a drape, like some drapery on top, and that is going to be useful. So we're talking about having this. So I know this is my 4K texture, and let's say I want to have 3 different pieces of drapery, right? So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to duplicate this plane, and I am going to basically go to geometry. I want to go to geometry, go to modify topology. Actually, no, edge loop, sorry. Delete loops. Is it? Oh, why is it not working? Oh, it's not working. Doesn't matter. So the idea is that I'm going to actually slice this into through 2 different pieces, right? So it'd be actually in symmetry would be ideal. So it'd be something like that. Growing my selection, Control Shift X. And whoops, wrong one, Control W. And now actually I want to do auto groups, and then flip this over, Control W, and now we have 3 polygroups, right? So I can actually split this now, and these are going to be used for the drapery, right? So like for the tarp on the top, right? So I have 2 options. I either put a couple of like tarps on top or just a single one. And the single one would mean that I can get away with just this, right? So this would clearly fit into a texture because this is my texture, right? So I can do something like this, right? And then drop it, right? So I'm gonna just drop it. So now I can also just basically delete this. Whoops. Delete that section over there, right? Geometry, modify topology, delete hidden. And now I can just drop this. Actually, it won't work because, like, not properly because of the ArrayMesh. So if I go over here, actually, let me move this back a little bit. I'm gonna turn on dynamic subdivision, sorry, and increase the thickness a little bit. Turn off post. Offset's gonna be like that. Actually, offset should be up like this. Thickness. And now I want to crease those edges. And now if I drop this, if I go to my dynamics, let me put it over here. I want to click collision volume. And if I drop it, you can see it's not dropping, it's not colliding with that side because that's an ArrayMesh. It's a rendering thing mostly. So it only works once I apply my actual array. So that is gonna stay there just because I want to make sure that I want to make sure that this is ready before I even drop this. The same thing goes over here. Snap this. Like that. Actually, I could go to my clip curve brush. And there we go. Oops. Let me increase that resolution a little bit. Maybe that was a little too much, but it's fine. I just clip that. Clip that. There we go. Perfect. Same thing goes over here, creasing those edges just to make sure it's a little smoother. And on the front, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have actually these should be standalone. Yes, exactly. So they're gonna have some ropes over here. So if I do this, does this work? Yeah, it does actually. It does work. So I'm gonna do that. Changing my concept a little bit. It would be something like this. And then you're gonna have like a rope over here on the side, tied over there. And that's gonna be where this this thing is gonna tie in, right? Can your current workflow be done with using ZBrush 2022 Perpetual or new features? Oh yeah, there's a few. Don't worry. There's a few features that are new that I can't do without. Like repeat the similar parts is one of them. Repeating IMM brushes, like the retopology brush is a big one. That's a big one. The whole like Lightbox thing is also game changer. That kind of stuff is also pretty cool. Now, here's another thing, and this is for you, Ian, because this is something that my friend Ian shared with me. Now, you know how you have all of these, right? And you're like, okay, I want to start now renaming my objects for baking, right? So this is a part of the process that I think is boring, and you need to make sure that it matches the names so you don't have problems in your baking, right? When you're matching by name. Now, imagine we have the low poly and high poly as well, like here on our subtool list. Let me increase that visible count over there. And imagine we have that. And I want to start renaming all of this. Obviously, they're already renamed, most of them, but not these ones, right? So what I want to start doing is actually, I want to start running a script that does that for me, right? Because we now have Python support in ZBrush, you can start writing your own macros and tweaking them in Python to do what you want. Ian made a simple script, a simple macro to rename all the assets in the subtool list. But I added onto it because sometimes it could be hard if you're working with multiple subtools. If you're doing any hard surface like a mech or something, it can be a little bit harder to figure out what you have selected, right? When you're starting to rename and thinking about it. So what I usually do is I go to solo mode and then I frame the object before I even rename. So I basically added that to the code and I just basically This is a script that we have over here, but what you need to do is actually go to ZScript, go to Python scripting, and load a script. Now, I have it over here, way over here. Where is it? Dang it. It's not over here. Let me just find it real quick. It's in my Lightbox, my new Lightbox. So I'm gonna go over here. Where is it? There you go. Okay, there you are. So Lightbox. Public Lightbox. Where's the scripts here? So no. The startup macros. Oh, it's not here. So Lightbox. The startup macros. There it is. Okay. So it's over here. Okay, I'm gonna copy this, and I'm gonna load. And I'm gonna put that over here. This is basically it. It's the rename all subtools 1 because I'm lazy. And then it will appear over here. And this means that you can go ahead in your preferences, go to config, enable customize, transpose master. Oh, wow, okay. So then I can just basically add that button wherever I want. I don't know what's going on there with the transpose master. So basically, if I have this, now I'm gonna turn off enable customize. And if I click this subtool, this button, what it's gonna do is it's gonna solo mode and then frame twice. So it's full on, like that model is just in your face. And it's gonna tell you to rename the object, and then it's gonna repeat and go one subtool down and then repeat, right? And this is the boring part, right? So if I do this, now you can see what is this? I don't know, log 01 underscore high, and I can just copy that, and now next one. So I don't know, strut. I don't know. I'm gonna go with strut 01 high. What is this? Strut 2. So you just have to name it, right? You don't have to go click here, click there, and do this and whatever. So you can see the point. If you don't want that, then this would be like the wall, like the side, right? Side underscore high, and then this would be the wheel underscore high. So wheel underscore high. This would be the wheel, I don't know, cover, whatever. I'm horrible with names. So underscore high. This would be, actually these would be wheel. What do you call these? Wheel what? What are these things? Jesus, I can't remember. Yeah, I can't remember what it's called. I don't know. Wheel stuff. Let's call it stuff. I don't. Sorry, my English is failing me. So there you go. And this would be the wheel cap. So you can see that basically wheel cap. And I can write faster, that I can move my arm to click here, click there, right? And then the same thing goes over here and over here. And then once you're done, let me just skip through all of these. Why is it not letting me? There we go. That's interesting. Okay. Once you're done, it finished renaming everything. And you didn't have to go select, check if you're selecting the right one, click rename, type it in, enter, go select. You know what I mean? Just click one button and it will spoke. That's it. It's a spoke, right? The spokes. Sorry. Whoops, a daisy. Camera's frozen. Yeah, sorry about that. That's my camera. That's my bad. Camera's not plugged in the right. Software is not running it correctly though. Yep. Which software you can use? I don't know what you mean. You mean this? This is ZBrush. I know it doesn't look like it because I tweaked the UI. But yeah, so this is another thing that I think we've done recently for this part of the process. Like ArrayMesh is, to me, key in this aspect, right? We also have the retopology brush I already told you about. The new Z Modeler editions are also like a good thing. There's a lot of stuff here. Like I have an IMM here. I have like VDM brushes that I use all the time. So this would be one of the things that I would definitely say that it's worth using the new version. So But the repeat to similar parts definitely a big one for me. Or yeah, repeat to similar parts. Yeah, that's it. There's more though. Let me think about this. Just do this thickness a little bit like that. I don't need any smooth subdivisions. I just need it to drape properly. And now this, instead of being like that, is going to be arrayed. So I'm going to use ArrayMesh, lock position. Let me see where that pivot is. There it is. So actually I don't need to lock position, reset it so it goes to the center. Now I lock my position and now I can offset it like that. And now I want to scale it as well. And I could use the transpose line as well. So I can go to scale mode, move it like, whoops, scale it up, scale it down. You can see what it's doing. Just scaling up and down. So I can scale it like that, move it like that. And then I want to scale it. Scale it like that, right? Actually, this scale is not correct, so I want to make sure that this is set to 1. Maybe this scale is too thin. There we go. And I want to move it up ever so slightly. Scale needs to be set at 1. There we go. It's not it's off center. This is off center. So I can move it that way a little bit. Maybe a little bit more. Maybe scale the whole thing down. And there we go. So this is tilted slightly, so I can tilt it like that. All right, so we have a little bit of a base to get us started. And now the same thing goes for the little table over there. Again, tables and stuff, that's a little, but I guess we're doing this way, right? So what I would do is actually just model the table for our purposes, our intents and purposes here. So I'm gonna go into Subtool, insert, I start with a cube, then I change this to this Polycube 3D, scale it down. And now I have a mannequin here, so I can figure out, okay, how is this gonna work? It's gonna be sort of like that, and then I can have multiple of those, right? So I'm gonna maybe push this over here, and then I want to have the ability to position it. It's kind of like playing with Legos, you know. This is one of the things I like about environment art, because I'm a little bit of a Lego geek. So I'm gonna do the same thing for this. I'm gonna move this, change this to a Polycube 3D, do a little bit of a board there. There we go. Move it to this side, and I'm gonna split this. Again, a lot of subtools in this workflow. So I'm gonna go to ArrayMesh, turn on ArrayMesh. Let's see, transpose line. I wanna, okay, I wanna move this in the X amount, not X amount, sorry, Z amount. Like that. So it'd be something like this. And then actually this is too, yeah, this is probably gonna need to be a little bit deeper, meaning this needs to move, needs to scale. So like that, right? And then the same goes for the little cross thingy. So it would be, nah, I can do that later. So then the same thing goes for this ArrayMesh here. I'm gonna append a new one, lock position, reset, and then mirror. There we go. And I know this duplicates because if I append the new one and then I just offset it by 2, it's gonna match that perfectly. And now if I copy this, I'm gonna test it out on this new one. So I'm gonna lock position, reset, paste. It's kind of perfect, I guess. I should have locked the position before I did any of that. So let's do this again. Let's delete this. I want to lock position and lock size, reset. And now I'm gonna move this down here. Change this to a cube 3D. Scale it up. Make it a little thinner. Be something like this. So now you remember that this pivot though is still over there in the center, right? So we're gonna move this all the way over here. Scale it down. That's good. Doesn't need to be perfect. And now if I do the whole thing with the offset, it should work. So let's split this up. Z mirror. Also, if you want to tweak like very slightly, you don't need to press this slider. You can see there's 2 sliders. Let me do. Whoops. What? My hotkeys not working? There we go. You see that little slider on the top? There's 2 sliders on each slider in ZBrush. Not all of them though. Some of them. But some of these sliders have 2 sliders. So if I do this one, you can see it's going in very large increments. If I want to be super precise, tap that and then tap on the top. And now I'm going like super slow. You can see like how slow I am going. So I can be more precise about this. So this is another one of those ZBrush tricks. So I can go over here. Oh yeah, that's good enough. Okay. And now the same thing, I'm gonna go over here. Let me just turn off that magnifying glass. Append a new one and mirror. And now append a new one. And my transpose is still there in the middle. It's locked in position, right? This lock position. If I unlock it, you can see the pivot just goes crazy. So now I'm gonna append this new one and I'm gonna offset it by 2 exactly, which doesn't work because the pivot is not in the correct position. So if I reset this, there we go. Let me just do that again. 2. There we go. I think it works. Now the same thing goes if I append. It probably won't work the way I think it will work. Yeah, it won't work the way I think it will work. But it's fine. I mean, these can snap together there in the middle, and I can tweak their scale to match the grid eventually in Unreal. So for now, this is not needed. Whoops, delete. There we go. And now I want to make sure that this has a cross over here, so I can go turn this off. Actually, not turn this off, split this again. So this is just blockout, right? This is something that a lot of environment artists tend to use to do all their blockout inside a DCC, right? And, you know, be it Maya, Cinema 4D, you know, Blender, whatever. I tend to use ZBrush because I don't like jumping out of applications. And if you're in a studio, that's important. By grouping, you mean like folders and, you know, like the organization of the scene, right? What are you talking about? Like polygrouping? All right, let me split this. Turn off that ArrayMesh. Do that. Maybe do 45 degrees like this. Like that. There we go. Something like this. Now my ArrayMesh, I can delete this one. Actually, no, I want to delete, whoops. I want to delete the first one. Delete that. There we go. And this I can also flip in the Z axis and move it up to the front. I just need to know what I'm dealing with here. So -4. It's not working, so no mirror, I guess. We're doing this way. Okay. Cool. Yeah, those guys later. How did I get 100 subs? New subs on a Thursday afternoon. Yeah, I mean, I'm always basically promoting smaller YouTube channels just because there's a lot of like golden information out there on YouTube. You just have to search for it. Like, and I'm obsessed with environment art, right? So I search for all of these YouTube channels, and then something comes up and I watch it. Like, basically I don't stop watching. I watched multiple times a lot of these videos, and I can't stop, especially when it's like behind the scenes stuff, like how they made certain things. That's what interests me, how they make the games, right? And more than the actual, you know, the gameplay and stuff like that. Even though I mean, I'm a gamer, right? But at the end of the day, I'm an artist. So yeah, this would be the basis for what we have over there. So if I unlock the position, obviously this is gonna go a little crazy. And because the pivot is over there. Yeah, if I reset lock position. No, let's do this way. I just can't move this table. This is a problem, right? So when we have a table, it doesn't matter. Like, then we just duplicate that. And now what we're gonna have is some other props and some other stuff going around here. Let me think. Let me see my reference here. Nothing like looking at the reference. So we have some ropes to tie these knots together. So we have, let's say, yeah, let's tie this one to that one actually. So let's duplicate this one. Turn off ArrayMesh, and I wanna, first of all, I wanna snap this to that. Go to the center. Yeah, folders. Yeah. We got you. We have that on the list. Don't worry. That's one of the things that people have been asking since forever. Yeah, I guess you just have to wait and see, right? You have to wait and see what we have in store. Yeah, scene management. Obviously, again, we have announced a lot of stuff coming. There's a lot to do, and the team's been at it for a long time. And we have a limited bandwidth. Unfortunately, we have to pick our battles, right? So we have obviously the UV editor coming. We have the retopology, which is already out, retopology brush, but nothing that we release is going to be like that forever. We also rethink older features, improve them. We try to be more proactive with sculpting features. And then obviously we announced the UV editor, the new UI, and that kind of stuff. That takes time and it takes resources, right? So we have a team of dedicated developers working on those, and those are not easy tasks. That they're pretty tough, actually. Like, I wouldn't be able to do it. So okay, so let me just go over here and do a little bit of a trick. I'm gonna do this. It just ties together nicely. Let's do that. We can basically actually hide this one. I don't think I like this. I don't like that at all. This one over here. So I like that one. But I like this though. and having like some knots over there, like you know, like the straps. So then we would have those tied together like so. Right, so then we need to figure out how to do those knots. That's a separate issue. I just delete that, actually. I'll delete this one. Right. Now, drapery. Let me figure out this little thing over here. And let's start cracking. So, first of all, I want to put all of this into one folder, right? You're talking about folders, let's talk about folders. All right. So if I want to put everything into a folder, your natural tendency would be to go over here and click new folder, and then manually having to pick your assets and go like, oh, I don't know, is this the one I'm selected? This one, oh, I don't want that one. I don't want that one to be in the folder. So this is something I would never do. What I would do is I would use this little pizza box over here. So this little foldering thing over here, this is basically the transpose all selected. So now I can hold Control Shift and then just start selecting subtools. Or I could even click and drag. I could go to my select rect and then just go and do, I want these to be in that folder. And now I have them selected, meaning I'm moving all of them together, right, in one go. If I click new folder, it's going to give you, hey, where would you like to create a new folder with all these containing subtools? And you're going to click yes. And I'll name the folder. I'm going to call this stand. And now all of those subtools are in this folder. So now, if I go like this, right, it has all of those subtools into that single folder. Okay? For some reason, the drapery thing didn't go to the folder. That is strange. Did I delete it by mistake? Yeah, I might have deleted it by mistake. That is strange. Got deleted. Doesn't matter. We have the source one. So I guess this is all we need. So I'm gonna duplicate this again. Go over here. And why do I have a folder here? Because I'm gonna duplicate this folder. Duplicate. Okay. And now I have another one that's called stand. I don't want this to be called stand, so I'm gonna rename this folder. I'm gonna call this collision. Right? I just want this one for collision. So now I'm gonna set a different visibility set. So now I have the ability to, oops, not this one. I want to basically hide everything except for what's in that folder, right? And actually, I don't even need these. I just need something to get the collision going, right? So maybe, I don't need this. I just need that. So this, in essence, what I need to do is I want to make that array mesh. So basically go over here, go to the first transform stage, make mesh. And now I want to apply my dynamic subdivisions, because the more geometry you have for your collision, the better. Even though in this case it's kind of irrelevant. It's more geometry for the collided mesh, to be honest. But let's do it anyway, right? Let's do it anyway. Let's go to Dynamesh over here and my custom menu. Oh, I don't have dynamic turned on. Okay. Increase it and add a bunch of subdivisions. Maybe we don't need that many subdivisions. So like 500, I think it's good. And now this one is going to collide over there, right? So I'm going to go and just try to match this as best I can, right? And now I'm going to delete this. Whoops. Delete this. Maybe delete that as well. And turn on dynamic with some thickness just so I can see what I'm doing. Oh, right, I have stuff selected. So delete hidden. I don't need that much thickness. I want to increase everything. So it's just a preview, right? And now what I want to do is I want to recalculate that collision volume. And it's only going to take into account whatever is in view, right? So if I go over here now and run this simulation with gravity, I want to have like a very subtle gravity. And you can see it's just, there we go. You can see it's starting to clip, but that's because this doesn't have enough geometry. So what I can do is I can basically control D, actually without the smooth on. I can divide, delete lower, and then I have dynamic on still. I'm gonna go run the simulation. Let's run the simulation again. And now I know that these 2 points, I want these 2 points masked. So I'm gonna mask this and blur it out a little bit. Let me just do something like that. Then paint this, right? And we're gonna sculpt this anyway. So I'm gonna run that simulation. Whoa, there we go. So you can also change the firmness of this. Ideally, you would have more firmness as a first pass. It's gonna give you some weird results because it's looking at the low poly plane. I'm gonna go firmness number 4. That's probably good. See where we're going? We're going, you see where we're going with this, right? So because we still have clean topology, I could just delete a row and then we have the little stall piece. So, do I have this tilted correctly? Actually, let me do this again, but try to match this as best as I can. So like this, right? We calculate that. I can inflate those a little bit and then yeah, let's run that simulation. Yeah, because it's falling. It's gonna fall. It might be a good idea to just make it a little wider. Run the simulation. And now I want to make sure that these points here are masked. Over here, right? And I'll run that simulation. And let's do this with a very low firmness. There we go. I guess this is good, right? And then we're gonna have to sculpt like the actual folds and stuff. Like this is how I usually work with tarping, right? If you want to do any sort of tarp. I have a project that I did back in the day at Escape Studios with a few friends of mine from the industry. Well, now they're working in the industry. At the time we were studying together, where we did an entire like tarped like tunnel, like decontamination tunnel. All of those tarps that you see there were all done with a workflow similar to this, right? You have the prop already modeled and textured or whatever, bring it into ZBrush, wrap a piece of geometry around, use dynamics, and sculpt. What studios look for an environment artist modeling portfolio? If I don't have an IN PC, but I'm creating an environment artist portfolio, which skills I can demonstrate through simple environment. So then there's a lot of variables to your question. First of all, it depends on the role. Not necessarily depends on the studio and the role, right? And I know this doesn't help a lot, so I'm gonna break it down for you. First, you have to look at the type of studio you're applying for. Are you applying for Naughty Dog, or are you applying for a small indie studio or an outsourcing studio? Because more often than not, if you're going for Naughty Dog, usually their roles are like super specific. Like it's not just environment artist and you do a little bit of everything. You could be a set dressing artist and that's literally all you do. So in that case, showcasing what we were talking about earlier, reusing assets from Megascans is okay, as long as you can show that you can tell a story through how you display everything, how you assemble everything in the game engine, right? Tell a story through your set dressing, right? This is a level artist, and that again depends on the studio. Some studios, level artist means someone who does the modular kits, let's say, right, or architecture or whatever. Other studios is a set dressing artist. if you're applying for a role when you are modeling, making assets, that also depends here. Are you making the modular kits? Because that's a specific role. Or are you making rocks? That's another role. And are you modeling the landscape in the engine? That's another role, right? So it depends on the studio if they're big. If they're small, most likely you'll be doing a little bit of everything, which some people prefer, right? And in that case, then I would say fully finished environments where you did everything are kind of key to smaller studios. But obviously, if you're going for an open world environment with architecture, with, I don't know, everything, then that can take up a lot of time, and that is not feasible. So if you're going for a smaller studio, make smaller projects. Make projects where you can show that you know how to do everything from start to finish, right? So even sometimes the concepting, even though that's not necessarily the case. Like I know, for example, that, what are they called? Jesus, Hello Games from No Man's Sky, they have environment artist position where the artist actually does the concept and takes it until the engine, right? So they do everything. Like you take ownership of a piece, of an environment piece, right? That is incredible. But if you go, for example, for, I don't know, if you go for like Blizzard, I'm pretty sure they don't do that. Like you have a specific role, you do foliage. That's all you do. You do trees and plants and all of that, right? So it depends. Again, depends on what sort of job you're looking for. Depends on what sort of studio you want to work in, because that is a thing that you sort of decide. And then that might be the case that you make a portfolio for a type of studio, but then the other type of studio actually finds that interesting and reaches out to you, right? But you have to have a goal. You have to have a target. Like I want to target that type of studio, and that's it, right? So that's what I would do. When it comes to the high-end PC kind of thing, you really don't need a high-end PC. Like most of my portfolio is super outdated right away. Most of it is Unreal Engine 4. The last project is Unreal Engine 5. But if you go to that portfolio, all of those, except for the final project, were made in a 16 gig RAM laptop with a GTX NVIDIA card, and it was a laptop I bought in 2018, right? And it's a laptop. Okay, it's a gaming laptop, but it was a laptop nonetheless. And I did all of those environments in that laptop, like everything from ZBrush to Substance to Unreal, like all of that was on that, very, very modest laptop. So it's not like you can't do it. It's just you have to take into account how much RAM do you have. Like for sculpting, that's important, right? What CPU do you have? How much space do you have on your SSD? Like that kind of stuff is important for sculpting. And for Unreal, obviously your GPU is going to be the heavy hitter, right? And especially if you're doing lots of textures, and the more textures, the more VRAM, right? The bigger the textures, also the more VRAM, and then storage, right? So that kind of stuff is important. Let me just clean this up a little bit, shrink this, and I guess we are good to go. Let me delete this, delete hidden, and we have a little bit of some Tarp going on here. And now because I have that as a separate folder, I can go back to my view where there's no collision. It has the model sculpted. Now again, this is a problem right here, right? So maybe I should have included, just maybe, Rodolfo, you should have included all of those models. So this would be something like this, and then I need to go back to my collision, and I want to turn these, not these, but these on, and I want to apply this. I want to apply the ArrayMesh over here. So make mesh, and I actually just need something, so I can just do Dynamesh real quick. There we go, this works. And now I need to recalculate that collision, right? Recalculate it, run simulation, and now we have a thing over there, right? Maybe not that. Maybe we need a little bit more firmness. There we go. to push this in. Should be, I don't know. Looks weird. We can contract this actually, or deflate this. No, actually I'm gonna use something like a boolean or something for that. Or I can just sculpt it. Yeah, but we have a little bit of a tarp here going. So another thing I can do is I can go to Z Modeler, or actually can use select lasso. Not a lot of people use this. This is basically edge selection. Whoops. Edge selection, and then expand it once and delete hidden. Now we have a little bit of a tarp going. Now over here though, we can have another plane coming off of this where I'm gonna have a different material. We're gonna have like some transparency maybe. So let's say, because this needs to be planned out. So let's say that I have this. Maybe I can go Q-mesh, edge loop partial, and just Q-mesh this. Whoops, Q-mesh the edge. Yeah, just the edge. Not Q-mesh, sorry. Dang it, extrude. Sorry, extrude. Edge loop. Okay, so let's do this without symmetry. There we go, something like that. Now I want to polygroup this, polygroup, polyloop, and I want to go ahead and split hidden. Now we have this thing going where I can mask this off. I'm gonna go mask to the partial and then just run gravity. There we go. So this is gonna be, you know, like that, like let's have a pattern of like little like this. Let me show you the reference here real quick. So something like this with a masked material. So you don't need actually to have an individual kind of a thing. You can actually have a different material that just does that for you. So there we go. So do something like this, and now I want to mask this off. Push this, whoops, a daisy. Mask this off. Push this, come on. Push this down like that. So this would be the other part of it, right? So let's just flip that over. And there we go. Something like this. We can tweak it later. Again, we can add something over here. We can add a different material just on that edge. I don't know. I'm still thinking what we could do. So yeah, this is the base stall. Let me just do change my visibility set over here. There we go. And now we can start talking about materials, right? So will this stream be on VOD so I can yeah, this will all be, it stays on YouTube though. You're on Twitch, so you wanna go to the YouTube channel, because on Twitch it just gets deleted, but on the YouTube channel we save all our streams, ZBrush live streams, so it's all there, right? No. Let me see if I missed any questions. Who spoke? No, renaming is not a script. Renaming is an actual feature in ZBrush, like in most software. I'm just automating renaming. Maya, you also have to build a Python script to do that automatically for you, right? So I have scripts for Maya to do that for me. It's the same. It's not different in ZBrush. It's exactly the same. So again, it's damn it, this cameraman. So yeah, someone was asking, saying that it's ridiculous that we have to write a script to rename. We don't need to write a script to rename. In case you're new, I can always go here, click rename, and change the name, right? This is nothing special. This has been there since the beginning, right? So what I was doing was different. I was renaming all of my subtools with one button at once, one at a time, but at the same time, it's automated. Every time I type in the name, press enter, and then ZBrush does the rest for me, right? It just skips the subtool, presses the rename button again for me, and that's it. I'm just making a macro, basically, right? So in essence, this is what you do in a studio. Most of the studios have their own scripts, Python scripts, to do stuff like this, like automate tedious tasks, you know, like, especially because they have specific naming conventions, right? And where you want to follow those. So this was just an example. You don't have to write a Python script. I mean, Python is new. Renaming has been there since the beginning. No, I don't know what you're talking about. So, yeah, okay. So can you rename a bunch of objects and then change this suffix and prefix? That's a good question. That's a good question. I would have to build a script for that. There's a plugin. I think there was a plugin somewhere that did that, especially for 3D printing. But again, I would have to look at my script in Maya. I have a script in Maya that does that at home, actually, my PC. I'd have to look at my script in Maya and try to reconstruct that in ZBrush. Loading a script. So you can rename just one object, but you can rename a bunch of objects at the same time without loading a script. Well, but to my knowledge, and I could be wrong, but to my knowledge, you can't do that in Maya as well. There's a button there, there's a menu there, but it's Python. It's a Python script. It's not a native C++ thing. It's a Python script that's running under the hood. They just added it on the release in Maya. You know, I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about. I've seen that menu in Maya. But I mean, we just released Python. This is version 1, right? There's more to come. But we're in talks with studios as well all the time, and asking for their feedback, asking how we can improve this for the next iteration when we improve the tool. But yeah, I know what you're talking about. The window thing in Maya that allows you to change the suffix and prefix. But again, that's still a Python script running under the hood, you know. Again, we have a lot of stuff that we're working on. I can't really tell. I can't really talk about it. But again, some of the things were mentioned already previously. If you rewatch this stream back, some of those things are related to Subtool organization. Because again, this is not Maya. It's a sculpting application, right? First and foremost. This is not 3D at all. This is 2.5D. That's why you can handle 100 million polygons. And you can't in Maya, nor in Blender, nor in any other application. Right? In terms of poly count, it's unmatched. And it's because it's not a real 3D application. It's 2.5D. It's not rendering half of the stuff that you have in the scene, which is what happens in any other DCC, including Cinema 4D, right? So it is just, people comparing ZBrush to DCCs is just stupid. That's like me saying, oh, you can't do layers like in Substance Painter. Well, yeah, because Substance Painter is a different application. It's just a different type of application. You can't do sculpting in Substance Painter. There you go, right? The same thing goes for comparing, I don't know, Houdini to Unreal. It's like, that's stupid. It's a game engine versus, you know, a DCC, in essence, a procedural node-based DCC, right? This is not even node-based. Like ZBrush is not node-based. You know, the Maya is all node-based. Like everything in Maya, including your actions, your extrudes and whatever, they're all a node, right? You go to the node editor, it's all there, described, right? So it's a very different beast, different types of applications. It's a DCC first and foremost, so you have to compare it with other DCCs, right? And that means that you can't really, it's more of like a Swiss Army knife in a sense. You can do a lot of stuff, but you can't do, it's not specialized in one thing, right? Maya is great for scene organization, and not just Maya, Blender and Cinema 4D and all those DCCs are great for scene organization, building scale in terms of matching it to engine, that kind of stuff. But I would say most of the heavy duty work, the heavy lifting, that the most of the time you'll be spending on making the models and doing the textures. And that's where ZBrush and Substance are, like, you know, unmatched in my opinion, right? Right, let's move on to modeling a piece of wood, right? So there's a little technique that I like to use for making the textures, and I talked about in the beginning of the stream. We don't have a lot of time, but I talked about that part of an environment artist's skill, especially if you're in ZBrush, right? If you're modeling and texturing, is conveying the material through the sculptural aspect, and then obviously through color and through roughness and all of that, right? Part of that is through your normal map and also through your baked maps, like your curvatures and all of that, right? And that's basically your sculpting ability, right? So I'm gonna make this very simple. Obviously, we would need more time for me to actually delve super deep into this. We can do another simple project, you know, so I can go over this next on our next stream. But for now, what I want to do is I want to go and start by basically having my mesh divided. So I want to make sure that my ArrayMesh has lock size on. So whenever I start moving, because you can see in ArrayMesh, if I go over here to my move infinite depth and I don't have the lock size on, and I start moving it to the side, if I had any offset over here, let's say I have an offset like that, and I start moving it, you can see the object is moving. That's because it's looking at the bounding box of this mesh, right? And if you move this, now the bounding box is larger. So it's keeping that distance. So the distance between this point and this point is the same, right? It's still the same distance, but now it's a much larger gap. You can see that distance is the same. So if I don't want that to change, if I want this object to stay still, I need to lock that bounding box up, that size. This is what it does, right? Lock size is just locking that bounding box. And now if I move this, doesn't matter. They even touch over here. Like if I want, look at this, pretty, it's basically modern art. So yeah, so this is the first thing I want to make sure of so I don't ruin my ArrayMesh. Next thing, I'm gonna apply my dynamic. And I would need to go up until I have like, what, 1 million? There you go. I don't wanna, because I just wanna convey materials, like materiality to them. So I want to go, maybe I want to inflate this up a little bit over there, just create and break up this steadiness. The same thing goes over here, just inflating and deflating just a little bit. Doesn't need to be too much. And now I want to move this as well. Whoops, BMN, move infinite depth. I want to move this over there, move this over there. Just ever so slightly. There we go. Great. Now, it's still matching, so I have to make sure that this is not, you know, ruining this whole thing that I've done, so I can't change it too much. And then I want to start carving in that materiality. So I have two ways I could do this. I can go back to my lowest subdivision level. I can assign polygroups. So let me just, whoops. Let me just assign a polygroup over there, and then have UV master in order to assign some UVs. Right, so I can go Z plugin, UV master, polygroups, unwrap. And now, in order for me to check the shell, I have to work on clone, flatten that, and you can see the shell is not straight, so I'm gonna change that shell like that. Needs to be sort of straight, doesn't need to be perfect. And now I go to Z plugin, I can do that, unflatten, and then copy UVs, because it doesn't work with a model with subdivisions, right? So I'm gonna go back And then I want to go to Z plugin and paste UVs. There you go. And now I have my UVs. So that effectively means that, what the hell is happening over there? That is strange. Do I have thickness over here? No, that's strange. Oh, it was the inflate. Of course it was the inflate. There we go. So I can smooth that out. Doesn't matter. It's not gonna be perfect anyway. What I need is, first I need my grain, right? So I need my flow of grain, right? How can we learn ZBrush very fast and at a level where we can create all the assets that we need for the game? Right, that's a tricky question, because I learned it fairly fast, but I had, like, again, I was a Maya hardcore user for like 12 years before I even started learning ZBrush, right? Doesn't look like it, but I'm that much old. So yeah, so I would say first set a target. Like, what do I want to learn? It's not ZBrush or Substance or Maya or Cinema. That's not the point. The point is, what do I want to learn? Do I want to make props? Do I want to make environments? Do I want to make VFX? Do I want to make, you know what I mean, like characters? Like, do I want to make weapons? Once you set that, then you understand what tools do I need to know, because this is the step. This is the pipeline, right? And if you want to do environment art, then what you're learning in ZBrush is very different. You don't need anatomy. Well, maybe it's useful for certain things, but you don't need to learn anatomy. You need to learn how the brush system works. You need to know how to work with primitives, subtools, how to use your extenders. So I would say learn a hard surface in ZBrush. That's how I learned it, right? I did some Dynamesh stuff. I was a fine artist, so I knew how to do Dynamesh, and that's it. And ZBrush it and subdivide it, and that was it, right? And knew 3 brushes. And when I started actually getting serious and learning about ZBrush, I took a course with Paul Gabriel, where he taught me hard surface in ZBrush, and I did a Gundam, right? The Gundam in the intro, this intro over here. So that Gundam that you see, let me see. Let's see if you can see the Gundam. Wait a minute. Where is it? No, it's not going to show. It's next to this. So after this, you'll see the Gundam. Let me see if I can skip that for you. Let's see. Do you see that Gundam? This was done in his class, 100% in ZBrush, right? So this is what I mean by learn a thing, and eventually hard surface for me is the best way, because you can learn all of these features with a single project, right? And then once you know how to do that, you know how to do anything. Hard surface, right? And most of the stuff you do for environments is hard surface. Even, I would argue, organic stuff like rocks and stuff, it's kind of hard surface, right? There's more sculptural aspects to it, but still hard surface. So what I would want to do now is I want to go to surface noise, and I want to pick an alpha. So I can pick an alpha from my textures. No, it's not here. It's in my Lightbox. Textures. Let's pick one of these pictures, right? It's just a simple picture. So I'm going to do that. And obviously you can do XMD. You can use your XMD toolbox. And one of the additions that we added for ZBrush recently was the ability to transform the alpha in the mesh procedurally, even without using UVs, right? So you can do that without using UVs. And this means that I can, okay, I don't want to mix. I want to add a little bit of strength there. And this means I can transform this, but obviously I have UVs, so I can turn on UVs. And then the angle is kind of correct. So I can go and do 0. Now I have the correct angle. And now I want to do this at 2 times, actually 0.5. So this is what I would get, like super high frequency detail. Now you could argue, okay, then, but we need to actually, this looks weird. This looks just like a blob, like a little bit of clay, and then slap some textures on it. This is not enough, right? This is something I see a lot of beginner artists in their portfolios. They just have the base model, super high poly, and then just slap a texture, but the sculptural detail is not there. So there's no, why would I even sculpt it then? I could just model it low poly and apply a tileable texture, and that's it. So I'm just using this as a reference, right? So I want to apply this to my mesh. Actually, I should apply this with a little bit of, maybe a little stronger. Look at that. Apply it to my mesh. And then I'm going to use this as, actually, I might need more geometry. We're going to need a bigger ship for this. So I'm going to actually go higher in my subdivisions. That's probably the reason. Sorry about that. And apply this. It's still, whoops, a daisy. It's still a little bit too high frequency, but I guess it's fine. And then once we have this, I'm going to start doing this stuff manually, right? So I want to duplicate this because this is a trick I do all the time. Like if I want my low poly, or start with my low poly, I'm going to duplicate this model. Any day now, there you go. Duplicate this model. And this is going to be my low poly, so I can just hide it. And now I'm going to delete the lower subdivisions. And I'm going to Dynamesh this. And I'm going to drag the resolution slider. So if you go to your Dynamesh here in your menu, go to your menu, Dynamesh, there you go. Drag this resolution slider over the piece of the geometry that you want. And it's going to tell you the resolution. And then if I Dynamesh, it's going to retain that ratio of polygons, right? It's going to blur it because I have blur on. But if I don't, and if I have something like this, maybe a little bit higher, I could go a little bit higher and Dynamesh this. And still, I could go higher. Here's another trick. If you want to type in a specific poly count for Dynamesh, here's what you can do. Go to your deformers, remesh by Dynamesh, and in this version of Dynamesh, you have a target poly count. And let's say I want 1,000,000. There you go. Dynameshed with 1,000,000 polygons. Done. And it's faster, by the way. It's a better algorithm, let's say, of the same Dynamesh. Let me see if there's something in the chat. There we go. Nope. And now that I have this, one of the other things I have is my XMD brushes, right? So I could go to my Lightbox, go to the XMD brush, or actually I could just bring in a texture file. So I can go to textures and have that one, for example, open that up as a texture, go to texture, make alpha, and turn off the texture because I don't want color, right? And now I can go over here on the top and just drag that over like so, like that. And this is probably in need of more details. So I'm gonna basically increase that Dynamesh resolution because I'm at a level where I need more detail. There we go. There we go. Much better. So I can do stuff like this, right? You can take pictures on your own, convert that into an alpha, and just drag that over. Now, again, this is still just dragging detail on a mesh and not necessarily sculpting anything, right? So first of all, let me just fix this thing because I forgot this. So trim dynamic, start actually. Keep in mind that whenever sculpt you do on this, especially because it's wood, you have to follow the grain, right? So I'm sculpting up and down here. Up and down, right? And we're going to get to the part that you guys are wondering. So now go to standard brush again, drag that over, re-Dynamesh. And now what I need is actually use the DamStandard to emphasize a few of these veins, right? These striations over here. So I want to go over some of these, maybe with a bigger brush. Go like that, like that. Just emphasize a few of these, not all of them. And I use a mix of that with the orb cracks brush and just push those pieces here, especially over here, right? Because over here, what we need, and this, you will be judged on this, by the way. If you're tasked with in an art test to sculpt something, like how does the grain make sense? Like, is it anatomically correct? Because again, trees and rocks and stuff like that, they have anatomy. They have their own anatomy. It's just that pressing Alt over here. It's just that it's not muscles and stuff. It's fibers. It's erosion, right? I mean, if you're talking about rocks, of course, this stream would end up with me talking about rocks, of course. So we're gonna do something that's just making this like that, right? And now another thing that I use a lot for both rocks and stone and wood is my mallet fast brush. In this case, I'm gonna use my mallet fast 1, and I'm just gonna try to chip away at that surface, right? I wanna make sure that these striations have to come from somewhere, like there. And I wanna make sure that it goes over that entire surface, like that, right? This wood has been worn out on that tip, like so, something like this. And one of the things I forgot to do was actually do a morph target. So in this case, I want to make sure that I do that morph target once I start carving in that surface. Yeah, so over here. So no morph targets, but I can still control tap that and then project history, right? So if I go to my morph brush, it's probably not gonna work. Oh, it is working. See? It's morphing back that detail. So I can go over here and morph it back. So now I don't need to care about if I ruin this, right? Because I can always sculpt it back again. Whoops, a daisy. But now, because we're using morph targets, actually good practice to start doing, to maybe not Dynamesh, maybe not re-Dynamesh while we're doing this, right? So I want to start chipping away that surface a little bit. And you can see we're starting to get that surface look, right? Alpha que usaste é bom para te orientares e dar os detalhes com DamStandard. Yeah, sim. Detalhes com DamStandard. Exatamente, é exatamente isso. Sorry, a little bit of Portuguese. But yeah, so the user is asking, the alpha that you use is good to get a sense of where you should use the DamStandard to just, you know, sculpt in your details. So yes, this is what I use. Pictures. Actually, I don't use alphas because you're restricted when you're looking for alphas. There's a limited amount of pictures online, but actual photos of wood grain and photos of rock textures and stuff like that, you can find that anywhere, and you just use this in order to guide your sculpting, right? And this is the flexibility that I like, because let's say I'm carving this and now I'm carving, oh no, I carved too much. Actually, this looks good. It looks like a little bit chipped off like that, right? But let's say I'm going like, okay, maybe I'm carving in and I'm carving in too much. What I can do is I can go back with my morph brush and morph it like that. So there's like this cylindrical, still this cylindrical shape to it. So usually I over carve this wooden piece like there, like on the tip, right? On the tip of the wooden log like that, right? And then I go with my morph brush and I just morph in a circle, kinda. So like that, right? So it gives this illusion that there's a layer, like a bark layer to it, right? You can transform photos and alphas. Yeah, exactly. So you go over here, you open that up, then go to make alpha, and now you have an alpha. That's literally it. Like my morph brush now has an alpha. Whoops. So not necessarily the best, but yeah, so something like this would be great, but obviously then you can't make this too perfect. So I'm gonna go back to my morph brush and just start chipping away at that surface again. And this is the part that I think is important, because then you get this because it's sculptural detail, you're gonna capture this in your baked maps, meaning that it's gonna get it's gonna be part of your mask that's gonna lerp a bunch of textures. So in case you're using a material, right, where you have masks for dirt, moss, whatever, it's gonna look at this detail, right, because you're using a masked kind of workflow in Substance. So if I'm pressing Alt over here, I can also do this, right? Do this, sculpt it back again. I can push this down a little bit. Doesn't need to be perfect, but you can start seeing that some of these, it gives me other hints then. As I'm doing this, there's happy accidents that happen, like over here, right? And now I'm starting to take advantage of that. I'm going to use my DamStandard, and I'm just emphasizing those details over there, right? And you can see what I'm doing. And again, this is limitless, right? Because I got that image off of the internet, right? But I can go out on the park or whatever and take a bunch of pictures that I like for texturing, for the materials, and then use that to start carving in and sculpting in my details manually. And this is the cool thing, because now with a library of that, you can organize it in your own Lightbox, and we can go over that. Basically what you do now, this is exclusive for 2026, you can go to Preferences, and under Asset Directory, you can create a new directory so you can store all your brushes, all your alphas, and it's always in the same place. Before, it was a pain in the ass, right? Because every new release in ZBrush, you had to sort of like go to copy the files. Some of them were in your C file, program files. The others were in your user documents, right? The UI and stuff like that. Now, it's all in one folder, and you can customize that folder. You can add different subfolders to that folder, and because it's your own folder on your own directory, you can have that in your documents or something if you're in Windows. Whenever there's a new release, you can just go over here, change location, and have ZBrush look at that folder. And now you have your Lightbox, in essence, throughout versions. And this is game changer for universities, I can tell you that, and even for studios, right? Because now you have a Lightbox folder per artist or per student, right? Which is perfect, right? So if you're tasking people on doing a library of IMM brushes, let's say for kit bashing and stuff like that, you have that library that's either shared or not necessarily, right? So again, going over with my DamStandard with the negative, like Alt key, and doing a little bit of that. So in my experience now, it's a good idea to just, because there's a lot of noise here. This is a lot of, like, you can tell it's just a piece of tile-level texture just going through here. So what I like to do is I go over with my trim dynamic with a very low Z intensity, and I just start flattening out some of these areas over here, going around the model. I can't use symmetry, and that's the point, right? I don't want to be too symmetrical, right? Just a very low intensity trim dynamic, just going over this piece. And I want to finish today's stream making something, and this is the case, like sculpting wooden materials, right? So it'd be, this is too much. You see, like that is too much over there. So maybe smaller brush size. Start going, always going the grain, right? The direction of that grain. So over there, same thing goes over here, smaller brush size. So making this look flatter. And you can see now it's starting to look a little better. So now we do the same treatment over there. You can see the difference, right? This is just trim dynamic stuff, very, very basic. This is sculpted. And all of a sudden, it looks like, well, obviously nobody's going to look at this like that, right? They're going to look at it like from this distance, maybe, right? On a first-person shooter, maybe, but on a third person, they're not even going to look at that. So, but again, depending on your texel density, that could get blurry anyway. So I learned C++, Unreal, Anatomy, and decent ZBrush, and I want to build a AAA quality indie games, content, characters, clothes, movement, environments. I can dedicate all my time. Okay, but I'm struggling with the full pipeline, hard surface in Maya ZBrush, doing rigging, retopo, and animation. I want to create small but highly detailed environments, Red Dead Redemption 2 level quality, on a small map. Okay. Then freelance and slowly build my own games. The path feels unclear. Guidance on the full pipeline would really help, and I want to learn as fast as I can. Okay, So first of all, let's take a step back, okay, on that. I would say you're thinking about it correctly. If you want to make indie games, you want to make the best quality you can with a smaller scope, right? Especially if you're starting out, right? I wouldn't put too much pressure on myself in being a master at everything, right? Because you're gonna have a hard time with that, and nobody can master everything. They can know a lot of stuff. Sorry for the camera again. I don't know what the heck is going on with this camera. So you can do a lot of things pretty well, but not to like Olympic level. You know what I mean? So I would say you want to understand the pipeline. That's the key for you, especially because you are the pipeline. Because if you're an indie studio, and most indie studios when they start, they're basically one person. You want to understand the pipeline to a T. That's the most important skill, right? You want to be a pipeline technical artist, first and foremost, right? That's the most important thing. And then on top of that, you want to understand performance, right? You want to understand optimization. Once you do that, all the tools are just tools, and they want to feed into that pipeline, right? And we could talk about this on my streams for sure. Like I can show you other techniques for trim sheets, tileable textures, optimization techniques for modular kits, reusing the same textures with masks, using set maps instead of coloring everything in the base color and substance. This is something you probably want to do, especially if you want to go for that realism at a high optimization level, because it could get tricky. You know, like how do you think they optimized Red Dead Redemption? Like Red Dead Redemption is huge in terms of scope, and it's absolutely perfect in terms of detail and scale, right? So that game is a masterclass in optimization, I would say. And some of the assets you can tell by some of the assets, right? Not all of them, obviously. There's a lot of uniquely textured assets, but you can tell that there's some assets that are basically using set maps with a substance designer and ZBrush workflow. And what I mean by that is that you sculpt your mesh kind of like this. And we could do that. We can do that with this mesh, right? It's simple enough. You're sculpting, and then what you're doing is you're baking this down and generating RGB masks, one for curvature, other for dirt, and the other for like moss or something, right? And then once you do that, you have basically obviously you have your ambient occlusion, your roughness, right, and your height map packed together. And then you have your normal map, which could also have something on the blue channel, because you don't need the blue channel. Just throw that away. You just need the X and Y, so R and G. And then in the engine, you set up the math to recreate the blue channel. And then base color is also a huge cost driven. It's a heavyweight texture, right? Because it has a lot of detail, and there's 3 channels, and it's sRGB, so it's a lot of data. So a lot of studios, when they're talking about smaller assets and assets that are just scattered around, texturing it by hand is not optimal in terms of optimization. So what they do is they do a base color pass, right? And then they repurpose that base color and make it a grayscale image, linear. Add that to, let's say, the blue channel on your normal map, right? And pack that together, and then use that as a driver of a set map that has your colors stored in 16 pixels. So your texture, your base color texture, is 16 pixels, technically, right? And it's hard for me to say without showing, right? And show not tell. But I mean, you guys are free to join my Discord, and we can talk about that more eventually. I can do a stream. Like, this is something I wanted to do this year anyway. Going back to streaming, I can do a stream where I show you a lot of this. But keep in mind that that's a very ZBrush and substance designer heavy workflow, right? You're gonna have to sculpt. You're gonna have to know how to convey these details through the sculpture, because the set map is limited. It's just a color gradient, right? That's gonna map your colors to the to the surface that you've sculpted, basically, because your base color is also probably gonna be a lot of generators, a lot of nodes taking advantage of your curvature, of your bakes, right? So at the end of the day, all of those workflows, there are optimization heavy workflows, rely on you being an excellent sculptor, right? Sure, I added on a QR code. I don't know if you can see it. Let me see if I can grab that QR code. Start streaming this QR. There you go. Okay. This is the QR code. And let me paste this over here. Bada bing, bada boom. There's my QR code. So you can scan that. And if you scan that, you have access to all my socials. I also post, we post on the Maxon ZBrush channel. And I repost on my socials the Ask ZBrush quick tip tutorials. So if you want to follow that along, I've been working on that for over a year now with Ian Robinson. If you want to find out quick tips, I have a few of them planned for this year already. I have half a year planned already of content for socials. So you follow me on my socials, and you'll have, whoops, it's too big. You'll have that cleared up. Right, so let me see if I can carve it in like that, and you can see it goes pretty fast. But then it's like, okay, you can't just do noisy stuff everywhere. You have to have some of these go up and down. So morph brush, maybe up my focal shift a little bit. Add an alpha to this. I want to have a square alpha. So now my morph brush is like squarish. So I can have that like that. You see that? And then same thing goes over here, same over here, right? And then I can go DamStandard and trim dynamic, and I want to start flattening out some of this surface. It's one of the things I wanted to show. Eventually you can do another stream on that, is that workflow between ZBrush and Substance Designer, not Substance Painter. Okay, so something a lot of people go like, what do you mean? Like, usually it's ZBrush to Substance Painter. I like Designer. I'm a little rusty in Substance Designer. To be honest, I haven't done a lot of Designer recently. I've been trying to get back onto doing that, doing more technical stuff in Substance Designer, and figuring out workflows between Substance Designer and ZBrush, and there's a lot of them, right? Especially if you're a foliage artist, you know this, right? This is usually very common pipeline thing. If you make your atlas in ZBrush and then use Designer to texture everything instead of Painter, like, so create variations and create the atlas fairly easy in Designer, right? So we have something like this, and I can go with my trim dynamic here, maybe have a little bit, so you can basically get rid of that stroke information. There's a lot of noise here that's unnecessary. Just go very subtly, all right? Don't need to go crazy on this. So subtly going. I'm just gonna sculpt this section so you can see what I mean by having the right variation of noise. And we can always add that noise back, right? Again, with a library of textures in your new Lightbox, you can just go over here with your standard brush, drag rect, go over here. Let's say, okay, I want, textures. I want this one, for example. So I'm gonna open this, make alpha, turn it off in texture, and now I can start, And here's the thing, it's an alpha. So that means I can go to alpha, the alpha palette, and tweak this after the fact, after I have it inside a ZBrush. So I can go to modify, I can go, okay, maybe I want to blur it out just a little bit, and then up the contrast a little bit. Have the mid value be a little higher, and then if I start, whoops, this is probably too contrasty. So we're gonna blur it. Let's just blur it a little bit, and then go max. Where's the max? There you go, max. Up that contrast, intensity, so I want more intensity. And you can start tweaking this. Let me just lower the Z intensity over here. See, it's still too noisy. So any aliasing as well is a good idea. And the intensity of this. Contrast, there we go. So now we have just a few pieces of information there. See that? More intensity, more contrast. It's the same alpha, but it's tweaked inside of ZBrush, so it's non-destructive, right? Your original image is still there. You don't need to go into Photoshop or something. You can easily do this by, okay, I need to blur it ever so slightly. There we go. There we go. A little bit of a high frequency detail there, but not too much. As you can see, like if I start smoothing this surface, for example, and then just drag that, it's not a lot, right? It's just a little bit of information, and I can always, again, morph target, morph brush, sorry, and I can do DamStandard, trim dynamic, go over this with my trim dynamic brush, make sure it's a little more uneven, because again, this still looks like it's the same tileable textures just going over and over again. So I can go and start adding a little bit of that detail here and there, and then go over with my, actually I need this to be maybe even more subtle, so it'd be something like this. And again, keep that in mind, right? So you want to go to brush with a drag rect. If you start dragging like too much, then you want to go to alpha auto masking, sorry, not alpha, brush auto masking, backface mask. And then you want to turn that up a notch, so something like that. You see, like it's that easy, guys. I'm telling you, it's like if you have a library of alphas and textures in your Lightbox, dude, it's amazing. All right, so then all you need to do is get your judgment about what nature should look like in order, and then you can start just flattening this up a little bit. Maybe I want to go a little harder. And then just flatten it out a little bit. Same thing goes over here, down here. This is probably too much. I'm gonna go like that. So now it looks like it's kind of like broken up, right? A little bit over there. And I want to go mallet fast, and I can hand sculpt and carve this. I'm using, again, this is mostly as reference. All right, so I can start chipping away at that surface like that, right? I still have my target there on my undo history, so I'm sculpting this, and this was just to show, I was using this as an example, right? Because I want to show how this could be in essence a piece of wood, or it could be something else, right? It depends on how you sculpt textures more than anything else, right? So I'm gonna go like this. So maybe add some variation over here in the middle. I don't want to go and finish my stream without finishing up this section. Oh, by the way, someone was asking about the playlist. The playlist is just it's White Bat. It's the Carl Casey on Spotify, or White Bat, and they're royalty-free music, so you can stream with it, and it's fine. In case you wanna check that out, they have playlists on everything. I just like synthwave, so you can see like the high frequency detail going away, but the carvings are staying, right? Because I emphasize them with a little bit of a DamStandard brush. You know that DamStandard stands for DamStandard, the artist that created the brush. And again, this is a repetitive stuff, right? Where I could do clay polish and stuff, but when it comes to organic stuff, man, there's nothing you can do. Like if I was doing hard surface, there's a lot of stuff that you can use in ZBrush, automate the process. This you just need to sculpt, right? This is it. You just need to sculpt, and then how fast you are kind of depends on how many times have you done this, right? And And I guess that is it. Let me see. Once you have this, down like that, and then this is still very chunky over there. It still looks like it has been made with an alpha. Whoops, wrong brush. There we go. So then it would be something like this. You can also use XMD's brushes, right, for damage and cracks and stuff, and they could reuse it for this kind of stuff, which is not necessarily cracks or damage, but it is kind of, I mean, it's just a tree crack, I guess. So again, okay, this trim dynamic, going over here, not trim dynamic, sorry, DamStandard, going over here, emphasizing that little piece over there. Now you want to do a stroke like this, for example, it's still round. You can see that's pretty round. So what I do is I do this, and then I go over with the Alt key. Doesn't need to be perfect again, because trees do have this sort of like variation. Then you want to go and do multiple strokes in sort of like every direction, because this is indicating that fiber, right? Fibrous nature of that tree that was cut off, right? Another thing, please don't ever do the wood grain against the largest surface area. It's usually the rule, right? Always, if this is the largest area, so the wood grain goes from here to here, always, right? Keep that in mind. You have to keep in mind how trees are actually cut in order to do these structures. The same with a table, right? So this would be, obviously we didn't do a lot because it's me while I'm streaming. But the idea is that we have this ability, and this is the sort of the same thing I used for this, right? So obviously this is still a little bit chunky, maybe too much. But again, this is just a single plank. And I can come over here and I can basically make these edges sharper. I like a brush that is called an orb flattened edge. This is from Michael Vicente, the former environment artist that worked at Blizzard, and he developed these brushes while he was there. And these are pretty cool because they're kind of like variations of brushes that already exist in ZBrush, but they're sharper. They're made for stylized art, and to a certain point, every art is stylized, right? And by that I mean there's always a point where your concept is just big forms, big shapes, right? And then you start going into the granularity of it. So in terms of design, I would say it's the same idea, it's the same principles. Obviously when it comes to like silhouette and stuff, you don't exaggerate as much in realism, but you still have to take that into account. You can see, like, for example, this wooden plank, for this case it works for this scenario, but in most cases I would want to break up this silhouette, right? So if I want to do, like, you can see it's just a straight kind of thing. If I want to break this up, I can go with a move infinite depth. First of all, I want to make, let's say I want to make it based on this surface, so you can see it's pointing up. Hold shift, tap that arrow, and now I'm facing that direction with my camera, right? So I can do this, for example, hold shift, tap that, and now I can rotate it like this, right? And now I can go with my move infinite depth, as long as I'm just panning, not rotating, and I can start breaking it up like ever so slightly, just a little bit. Careful, because remember, it's the same idea with stylized, but with stylized you would exaggerate that. You would go like that, right? But in here we don't do that, right? Because we're doing more of a realism kind of thing. I don't know. Can work around 15 hours daily plus 2-3 hours for math and physics. Do you think it is enough to choose? Here's the thing, man. You'll realize soon enough. I used to be like that. You'll realize soon enough that those 16 hours a day thing, you can do that for a year. After a year, out of the 16 hours a day you're working, maybe 6 will be productive. The rest you're gonna throw in the trash. That's what I found once I started doing this as a full-time thing. It could get burned out, and then eventually you come to a point. You can do that for like maybe half a year, but then after half a year, you're exhausted psychologically. You might not be exhausted emotionally because there's still, but you will burn out, and you will see creatively that your project, you get tired of the project, right? Because you don't experience other things, man. And you need your hours of sleep. I'm speaking against myself, obviously, but you need your hours of sleep, and you need to go and explore the world, man. You're a better artist the more your inspiration needs to come from real world, right? And this is the case. Most of the greatest artists that I know have told me in person, actually, that this is the case for them. They burnt out because they were overworking. And I've talked about this with many artists. Like, I'm talking legends like Ian McCaig and guys like that, right? They've been at it for so long, they burned out, and then eventually in order to get out of the burnout, they have to reconnect with the real world in a sense. They have to go take walks at a park, right? And then once they do that, they start to get inspiration from the moments that they're not in front of the computer. Like walking at a park and they see, I don't know, as an environment artist, you look at a tree and go like, oh my God, this tree is beautiful. And then you study nature, right? This is something that I get a lot when people ask me about anatomy. It's like, go and do life drawing. Don't just sit in front of a computer looking at an anatomy book and trying to sculpt things in ZBrush. Go do life drawing. Go do life sculpting. Go sculpted clay, right? Because that's where you're actually you're refreshing your creative juices in your brain, right? You need to experience that real aspect of art, right? And inspiration, right? Because then what's the point of what we're doing here if not making art, right? And making art, it's something that is inspired inherently by nature. And I guess we could go on a philosophical debate here, because there's a whole school of philosophy that believes in nature as this main source of inspiration, and the other school which believes in the abstract as the base of inspiration. And those two can go at it for decades and centuries, but at the end of the day, regardless of where your inspiration comes from, your creativity, your internal inspiration, I wouldn't say reference, right? Reference is one thing, inspiration is another thing. Inspiration is that thrive to make things, right? That drive to want to do stuff. That comes internally, and that comes from places sometimes when you're not like overexerting yourself, right? And I guess this is an argument against going and doing and being too hard on yourself. Like, you can go for 15 hours, that's fine, and that's a skill. Actually, you will do that if you go to a AAA studio and you're crunching, right? There will be times when you'll be doing that, and that's fine, right? For maybe a few months or something, you can go and do that, but there's a limit to everyone has, like, everyone's a bottle, and every bottle's different. Some are bigger, some are smaller, but eventually if you fill it up, and then it just overflows, right? The water just is pouring out. It's not doing anything, right? And you can sculpt up until a point where you're so burnt out that everything you do feels just dead, right? And then it's not as aesthetically pleasing. Even the quality of work starts to suffer, regardless of how good of a sculptor you are, regardless of how many programming languages you know, regardless of how many software have you mastered, you know. This is just, I feel like I've been in a rant with this for a while, but it's important because I've seen this all the time, especially nowadays with the whole like layoffs and stuff happening in the industry. I see more and more people either giving up or just going like super like overboard. Like there's no middle point, right? It's just you either give up, but it's like, frick this, you know, I'm out, or you just go too much to the other side, you know what I mean? Like and then you lose something inside of you, right? And I felt like it was important for me to say, I speak from experience, trust me. So on this, don't overexert yourself, appreciate life, go do actual sculpting, actual drawing, actual real life things, basically. And again, I'm not saying this from a position of authority or anything. I'm guilty of not following my own advice most of the times, right? But I do know that this is bad, right? I shouldn't be, you know, overworking and doing that kind of stuff, right? So that's why I'm warning you against the do what I say, not what I do, right? It's kind of a thing. So yeah, that is it. That's thank you for coming to my TED Talk, I guess. This is obviously a little too mushy, this section over here. Let's just finish this up real quick. Go to my standard brush, change my alpha to the previous alpha, and here's something cool. There's another trick. Last trick of the day, right? If I do this, it's still gonna affect that. Let's say I just want to affect this, right? What I can do is I can go to my depth, and I can click depth mask, and if I do this, even if I have like incredible intensity, you can see it's just, it goes over a certain section. It's easier to show you with the mask brush. So if I have a depth mask, if I do a mask, let's do a drag rect, and if I start dragging this, you can see it's just affecting, whoops, it's just affecting basically everything over there, right? So let me just have a bigger brush size. You can see like it's just affecting everything regardless of where I touched on the surface, right? And if you don't want it to do that, what you can do is you can set a depth mask where it's like super close to the surface. And if I do this, you can see now it doesn't go over that. It's just masking that surface over there. And obviously this focal shift is not great for this. So I can do, you know, like something like that. And the intensity on this brush should be a little higher. So you can see like it's based on where you click. And then it just goes up to that edge, and it doesn't, like I can do this with the stroke, with the dots. So I can do this, and I'm just painting over here, and it doesn't bleed too much. See that? So it's the same thing with the standard brush. So if I have a depth mask like that, and I do this, you can see it's not going over that border. So I can go like really subtle with this. Whoops, my focal shift. I can go really subtle, right? Like that. Maybe press one key. And then go over here with my DamStandard brush and fix a few things. Right? That's another trick that you guys have in your arsenal now. Wish I got time for the full rant. Yeah, no problem. That's great advice. Thank you. Yeah, they stay on VOD, so you can just watch it later, I guess. It was just some person asking, who was it? Yeah, Priyan Shushvar, official, was saying I can work 16 hours a day, and I told him that, you know, I used to do that, and now I don't anymore. So, because, well, I try not to. But I understand the dangers of that. Creatively speaking, I mean. Just because you get burned out, and then it feels like every idea that you have, like you get tired of it very fast, and you don't accomplish as much, right? Even in terms of skill, right? Like if you will learn that we should be all doing what Goku does, not what Vegeta does, right? Vegeta overexerts himself, and you're gonna learn about Dragon Ball while you're watching my streams, obviously. Vegeta overexerts himself, and he's always one step behind of Goku, and Goku is not talented, okay? He grew as he was a low-class warrior. He was weaker than Vegeta to start off, but he trained very, very hard. But here's the key aspect. Goku rests, right? Goku rests. Vegeta doesn't. Vegeta is always fighting, always trying to improve himself, is always competing, is super competitive, and he's always overexerting himself, never resting. Even when he's about to die, is like, no, I need to train more. And he's always one step behind a Goku. And the key is, eventually he learns this in the series, he learns that he will have to rest at some point. And it's in the moments of rest that he's actually improving, right? You can see that in the Cell Saga when they get out of the hyperbolic time chamber. Vegeta is all about like 1 year in the hyperbolic time chamber, just training. Goku and Gohan just went in there, not training at all most of the time. They're just chilling, right? They're mastering their skills, but then they have rest, they have fun, they eat, they take baths and whatever. They're having fun, right? And having fun is the key, right? If you're having fun, then it's good. If you're not, if you're just working because you're in the grind, let's say, that grind mentality, I have some bad news for you. That's not going to last forever. It's not going to last very long, you know? So, yeah. So this was it. We didn't do a lot. We were more talking about like how to sculpt materials in ZBrush in a sense. Again, for a workflow that is very specific for ZBrush to Substance Designer and using set maps to get most of your color information detail. Very optimized workflows for very optimized games. Again, some people are saying they're indie artists that want to do their own game and they're like, I want to do Red Dead Redemption 2 level of quality, but on a smaller scope. That's doable, but you have to optimize like Red Dead did. And one of the things they did was they sculpted a lot of stuff, right? Or scanned or whatever, right? But then what they did on top of that is they gathered that sculptural detail. Like you could also obviously do a lot of this in Substance. But the point is that you want to grab this detail on your mesh maps, on your curvature, on all of that, right? And those are the stuff that is going to go on your RGBA masks, right? In the engine to blend materials or to add moss, add edgeware, add all of that, right? And your color information is going to be using a lot of this sculptural detail to grab your map, your black and white mask that's going to remap your gradient map, right? Again, complicated. I can show it in an example at another time if you guys go and scan this little this is my camera again. Dang it. I have to fix this camera. I have to get IT in here to fix this camera. So, yeah, go over here. Yoo-hoo, look at that. And follow me on my socials. Follow me on my Discord. Go follow my Discord. And if you want to talk more about that kind of workflow, kind of optimization, you can always ask the questions over there. I can answer. I promise I'm still very much, I'm freer than what I will be later in the year, obviously, because we have events, we have stuff coming, we have development, we have releases, and there's life as well. So I promise I'll try to reply, and eventually we have to plan a stream just for pipeline stuff, right? Cool. All right, everyone. So this was it. I feel like I'm always most of the time just yapping and ranting and talking to you guys more than I actually do sculpting. I was watching a stream from Ether Courage yesterday here on ZBrush Live, and she was complaining about the same thing. She was saying, I feel like most of the time that I'm here, I'm not actually working. I'm mostly speaking, talking, and that's true. So I am 17 and want to become financially independent. Don't want to have an engineering degree. I don't have an engineering degree or big capital to start industry. So game development feels like the best fast for me to build skills. Yeah, to build skills for sure, right? Don't get me wrong. You want to, especially because you're so young. Like definitely you can learn them all that you can learn. Basically, this is the stage of life where you want to do that. But again, a candle that burns brightly, burns the brightest before it burns out, right? So be careful with that. You're still 17. You have a lot of time, right? You still have time as long as you manage it, right? At this point, you need to learn the pipeline. That's what I told you. This is the point, right? You need to learn a game engine. First and foremost, you pick Unreal, Unity, Godot. There's some open source. Obviously, you won't be able to learn proprietary engines from studios, but you have Unreal, you have Godot, you have Unity, right? They're widely available. They're free. You can start learning. That's it. And then once you learn that engine, you have to learn how to make stuff for that engine, and how to properly optimize it, right? So this is the pipeline stuff that I'm talking about. You learn ZBrush, you learn a DCC, and you learn a substance painter. This is the basic, like high poly, low poly kind of baking. It's the most basic thing. Then you probably eventually, we're gonna have to start delving into modularity, material layers, tileable textures and trim sheets, that kind of stuff, right? You know these skills. Once you learn these skills on how to make a modular kit all out of a trim sheets, maybe a couple of material IDs with trim sheet and some unique stuff combined, then you want to learn how to make masks, to layer materials. So this is the stuff. It's kind of like Pandora's box. You open it up and there's like wide range of features and techniques and skills. And this is what I mean. Like, you're young, just learn at your own pace. Don't overexert yourself. Just learn all of these techniques one at a time, right? Make small little projects, right? Make a small little project where I'm baking everything, high to low poly, ZBrush substance, that's it. And then let's say I want to do a modular kit for, I don't know, some medieval house or something. Then just do a single house. This is just a single house, right? And that's it. We want to practice modularity on even a smaller scale. Do a prop with a modular kit, with a trim sheet, right? You could do that. I told you, like this project I was doing with the wooden cart. In most games, if you see wooden carts, they're just all done with a trim sheet, literally, most of the time, right? Except when they're like a centerpiece or something, that's different. So learn those workflows, how to work with trim sheets, how to learn modularity. I shared a few links here on channels that you can learn a lot of these techniques, and eventually you're gonna have to be good at ZBrush. This is just a fact, right? You're gonna need to learn ZBrush and practice ZBrush, right? Because ZBrush is at the core of most of these techniques, right? And these workflows. It's ZBrush and Substance. You can argue about DCCs, which one's better. Is it Cinema 4D? Is it Maya? Is it 3ds Max? Is it Blender? It's a DCC, right? But a DCC is a part of that pipeline, that workflow. Then there's ZBrush and Substance, which they have no competitor, guys. Let's just be honest, right? Let's just be honest. You have some alternatives, but they're not competitors. Let's just state the fact, right? I know I'm in the ZBrush Live channel, but I've always known this, right? This is just it's a given fact, and the reasons are multiple, right? There's just multiple reasons in terms of features, in terms of support, in terms of everything, right? But you could get away with some alternatives if you're really on a budget or something, for sure. But here's the thing, you're gonna have to learn those. If you want to do AAA level quality, you're going to have to learn the techniques that AAA studios use, right? And there's there's a mentorships that you can do. There's Vessel Forge is the new school with mentorships that just opened up, right? I know the CEO and some of the artists there. They're all like lead. There's a lead material artist that's the owner. It's Jonathan. The guy's a lead material artist at Lightspeed LA. There's a lot of like senior level environment artists there that work for Sony, Santa Monica, Naughty Dog, you know, a lot of people in that area, like Santa Monica, LA area. They've founded that school, and for students, we actually provide, for their students, during the mentorship, we provide free licenses for ZBrush, right? So if you guys enroll in that school, you get a license for the duration of your course. And obviously there's more. I mean, there was CGMA, but it just got closed down. Some legal stuff that's going on, some craziness there. But there's Gnomon. There you have Gnomon Workshop, Gnomon School of Visual Effects. Also, if you're in the area in LA, just, you know, that's Gnomon is there, man. I wish I had access to Gnomon right next to me. I'm in Germany. I can't just pop in next door to Gnomon and go like, hey, I want to learn, you know, this and that, right? So if you're free, there's a lot of information online about that, man. And I guess it's overwhelming. It's a little bit overwhelming at first, right? Because there's too much information. You don't know which ones are reliable or not. I would say just pick look at those channels. You'll see a lot of workflows, especially in the next level game art. Gnomon Workshop is a good example. There's also, if you wanted something that's more mentored towards environment art, I would go the Vessel Forge. Beyond Extent is also a good one. If you subscribe to their Patreon, you get like a full PDF with like 250 pages of just techniques for environment art. You read that through and you know all the techniques there is in the industry for environment art. And then obviously you can expand on it by practicing it, right? And practicing, you go like, oh, what if I did this and did that? And that's what studios do. And that's how they build their own pipelines and their own workflows. So yeah, ranting. I'm going over by 30 minutes and I need to go make dinner. So I guess I have to dip. But yeah, I hope I wasn't just talking too much and not sculpting enough, because I guess that I do that a lot. I just realized you're not looking at ZBrush, you're looking at my face, which is kind of insane. Okay, so yeah. So I hope you guys enjoy this. I'll be back to streaming more often this year, I promise. And we can start doing some cool projects, maybe some smaller projects. In this case, where we can go over doing drapery like we were doing right now for Tarp. We can do more different types of props with just a little bit of a different, maybe a different style. Maybe I can start doing more stylized stuff. I mean, I rarely do stylized stuff nowadays. Maybe I can get back to it, you know? Like, so let's see. All right, you guys, just follow me on my socials. Remember, you go to my Discord. If you want to suggest something for the stream, you can also do that. Hey, it would be nice if you showed this or something, and I can just show it. It's okay. And I'll see you in the next one, I guess. So stay tuned. Happy ZBrush.